Okay, welcome to the second installment of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I'm to my beloved is to me. I think I'm gonna continue with a little introduction, which I started offline, and just continue this thought. The thought being, this mimer, first of all, is the seminal mimer of the Alter Rebbe that has to do with, which expresses the, by now, rather famous metaphor that the king is in the field. In the time of Elul, in the time of this month, Elul, the king is in the field. And this is not really, what I'm about to say is not really said in the mimer. It isn't said in the mimer, but it's background to the mimer. That, so the king is in the field. First of all, where was he before he was in the field? And secondly, where is he going? What's he doing in the field? It's as we're going to actually, when we start learning tonight where we left off, we'll see that the field is that palace, field, and city. Well, yeah, that's the order, right? And that palace, field, and city correspond to three different aspects in every person, which is another leg we have to go down here for the time being, which is, this is all about Malchus, right? The king. The king is in the field. And Malchus, we know, is the, I say this, but we know that Malchus is the engine of all creation, is Malchus. Just like the king is the engine of the kingdom. The way he moves his energies are the ways the kingdom goes. So Hashem, Malchus, is what's being revealed in these days from the beginning of Elul, when the winds shift and the climate shifts, and fall has its is putting down its footsteps, so to speak, and that's happening in the weather system, and then what's happening in the spiritual so-called weather system is the world is moving. The whole creation is moving from a time of, it was just a month ago, remember, of and Elul, right, and Tisha B'Av, in the heart of the summer, where it all was about mourning, destruction, loss, rebuilding. That's the message of hope, but rebuilding something that was broken. And this is a different wind entirely. This is a wind of healing. This is a wind of opening oneself up, tapping into one's own malchus, one's own ability to be an engine of creativity, an engine of good deeds, right? Tzedakah, and all the other engines that each of us would like to be. So the king, now, so he's in the field, this king, and this malchus in the universe, and this malchus within us. So, and by the way, interrupt me anytime if you're not following this line of thoughts, or if you want to interject something. All right, but this line of thought is going to continue for a couple of minutes, maybe. Okay, so the king, our kingship, etc., the kingship of the universe, the kingship of God who runs the universe, all beginning to recharge, right? A big energy of recharge is coming. In fact, that's what Rosh HaShana is all about when we learn the Maimon of Rosh HaShana. Why is it called the head of the year and not the beginning of the year? Because just like all of our projects and constructions, and the way we express ourselves in words and art and anything we do comes from our head. Now, it's obviously rooted deeper than the head and deeper levels of consciousness, but the head is the king, right? And the crown, in fact, sits on the head of God, and the crown, as a metaphor, the crown sits on the head of us. And we have the ability to, in these times, to manifest that kingship. Okay, so kingship, I think more could be said, but we kind of covered what I'd like to cover, at least for now. And so now the movement of kingship. So this kingship moves when it says the king is in the field, right? And the Alter Rebbe describes the amazing experience of the king being in the field. So what we're going to talk tonight about is what exactly is the field. But before we get into that, just as a brief introduction, So as I said earlier, 3 levels of king. The king before he comes into the field, 1. The king when he's in the field, number 2. And when he leaves the field, okay, the mimer, the first part of the mimer really tells us about the field and the whole metaphor of the king in the field. The second ois, which we're about to start tonight, talks about the 3 major levels of reality that there are. I said it incorrectly before we started recording. It's the city, it's the field, and the desert. And we'll get into that now. So where is the king coming from? So it's not said here. It is said in a mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tafshin Nun Aleph that he tells us that the king, before he's in the field, is in the palace. That's where he resides. Right? He's in the palace. But it's a new year, and some other kingly force is rising up. Let's call it the prince. This king goes out, or this kingly entity goes out from the palace. It's more likely that he's a prince, even though he's identified as a king. Why? Because he's going to go out from the palace into the field and be coronated in the city. So he's going from his inner sanctum, the king, the notion of kingship, the attribute of kingship, which we described earlier as the operational ability, the ability to take one's chokhmah, which is the highest level of interface to reality, the deepest level, and bring it into expression. Remember, Malchus is the womb. Malchus is the place where new things are born. Malchus is also called in the Zohar the mouth. It's the place where intellect gets translated into speech. Okay, so but when it's in the palace, it's all hidden. Malchus is concealed. And when he comes out to the field, it's the total opposite. Not only is he revealed, somebody has, Elise, you're gonna have to mute it. I'll just mute you all. I thought I would mute you all. Elisa, can you mute yourself? Oh, I just did it. Okay, I muted all of you. Okay. So when he comes out in the field from this state of, let's call it the palace state, which is, again, not mentioned in the mimer, but it's mentioned in the Frierdiker of his mimer, the palace state where no one has access to him. He's in his throne room. And so this is the level of Malchus when it's completely hidden. In other words, before Malchus, we'll call it simply the operational ability, the ability to create, etc., comes into revelation. It comes from a deeper source. It's from a deeper source, deeper within our soul, which is not so readily available. Elul, this stage that we're in, makes that Malchus readily available. So this is a huge teaching about what we call in Hebrew an asinus koyach, a power that's been given to us in this month to really come into ourselves, to be able to actualize more of ourselves, more of our kingship. And it's done in the mimer, the way the Elder Rebbe develops the metaphor, that the king comes into the field and he shows a seva panim yafis, he shows a beautiful smiling, he's wide open. He's like the winds of Elul, blowing freely and traversing without any of the humidity encumbering it. The winds are just wonderfully moving and circulating. And and everything else is going on in the autumn is starting to show its beauty and its color. So this is the field. This is the field. And where he's going, according to the Maimon of the Frierdiker, is into the city. It says somewhere, and I'm not sure if this is in the Maimon or not, that for coronation, as I said, it doesn't make sense if we were talking about a king. A king is coronated, right? It's a prince is something else. But in any case, the notion of kingship, as we've just described in a fair amount of length, is coming from a hidden level to an accessible level, and then that's the field, and then it's going to move into the city for its re-entry or entry into the palace.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So we're trying to find out if it's a king or a prince or going to his coronation, but maybe it is the king
Mm-hmm.
because one of the aspects of Rosh Hashanah, besides us praying for our needs for the coming year,
Yeah.
uh, one of the aspects of Rosh Hashanah is coronating Hashem as the king,
Right.
and
Even though he would,
we don't just
even
do it one time,
okay, I got you.
and, and he's the
He's,
king forever. We do it every year. It's like we renew the
right.
commitment from him to us and us to him. So it's possible that maybe the king is going out to the field
Ah,
in
ah.
Elul just to get ready for this recoronation, which will happen,
Okay. No,
that's for me. I
that is
never.
no, that's not you. That's resonates with exact everything that I've learned. You're absolutely right, and that's why we don't have to beg this question about is it a prince?
Okay,
Because the Rosh Hashanah, as you brought up, is the coronation day of that energy which has been coronated for over 5,780 years. It's constantly being recoronated, right? Rekinged.
right.
So yeah, so that's why there's no reference or mention of a prince. You're absolutely right. Totally
Okay.
100% on the mark.
Right. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, Anybody else? Okay, so we're going to start, and we actually started this mimer this last time, uh, but it's worth we'll do the repetition. If anyone's looking in, we're at ois base. If not, I'm going to say in Hebrew, translate, and try to editorialize as little as possible or as much as we need. So when it comes to a person, right, he puts it right back on the person. And there's even this journey of the king, right? There is a level in a person, a level of consciousness, a level of being that's called a settled city. This is a metaphor, right? Every person has a part that's called a settled city. Then there's the Bechina Soda, and every person has a same area of consciousness, level of being, of realization, which is called a field, and a midbar, and a desert. So he starts, what's a desert? Man, what does it mean if a person is in a state of desert? Midbar, so he quotes a pasuk that a desert is a place which is not seated. What does this mean metaphorically, not to be seated? In other words, not to have begun the process that will bear real fruit and nourishment and health. What is that? That's called all the thoughts and speeches and actions which are not aligned with what Hashem wants for a human being to be. That's called a desert. When the three garments of your soul, thought, speech, and action, are literally, they're not they're not directed in the path of Havaya, of God. So it goes without saying, so if you made some blemish in your thought, speech, or action, but even if it wasn't a blemish, meaning you didn't transgress anything, you didn't go uh, commit something which you weren't supposed to commit, right? But you just did something which is permissible, but but you did it in a way that's not 100, well, some percent not aligned with why you're doing it in the first place, i.e., eating, let's say. Why are you eating? Well, I'm eating to stay alive. But why are you alive? What's your purpose in being alive? Well, ultimately, it's to take my 613 body parts and align every one of them with the 613 mitzvahs, because I'm made in God's image, and what He has said are these 613 things are the way He said, if you want to really connect with me, because you're built like I am, and we can connect very well, so align yourselves with these mitzvahs. So even if you're eating, but not for that, for some even subtle. I mean, well, I don't have to go into it, but any motivation is not for that. So there's a trace there of some negativity. So even if you're involved in totally permissible stuff, But your involvement with them is not in a way that you need them to do service of Hashem. Okay, but another example, you're just doing idle things, not with any negative attention, but you're not involved. You could be spending your time, as we are right now, learning Torah, and Torah is God's Chokhmah, and Torah is a teaching which connects us with Him, or you could be doing something else. And again, it could be something you need to do, or something that's ascribed to your profession or your craft or whatever. Okay, so so you have some time that isn't. Now, if you're thinking about how to make that work of art something that will just be a celebration of Hashem anyway, well, then you're in amazing shape, because all your hands, feet, and mind are dedicated to bringing godliness into revelation. So, if you're not, the Zohar has an expression, if you're not, it's not the way of a king to play around with ordinary stuff. And we are kings, right? We're called Banim B'nei, what are we called? I think expression, maybe something, maybe I won't quote it because I don't sure I have it, but we are definitely called Malachim in certain Pesukim, we the Jewish people particularly. So this is what it means, that this is a desert. This describes different phases or seriousnesses of the desert. And the Lo Adam, the figure of the man, the one who is made in God's image, is not there. Pirish Adam, what is Adam? He takes the word Adam, Aleph, Daled, Mem. It says, Yecheskel has a vision of a chariot. On the chariot is on the right is a lion, on the left is an ox, in the middle is an eagle, and the right is a man conducting the chariot. And says, Lo Yeshev Sham. And that Adam, remember what I said about Malchus, the one that can move in the instruments and get things to happen, and right, because that's what he does. With his kingship, he rules the world, right? So that's not there. Yoshev Adam Shom. There's no revelation of Malchus. So this is, as I said, if Malchus is revelation of all that positive energy, desert is the absence of revelation of that positive energy. And what does Hashem say? It's a place, Le Yoshev Adam Shom, the Osele Mikdash, the place where the man will shine, where the energy of godliness will prevail, is in the Mikdash, in the holy temple. And God commands us, make a Mikdash, Mishchanti b'seichom, and my divine presence, which you should know if you don't know, Shechina, divine presence, equals Malchus in the language of Kabbalah, kingship. It's called Shechina. And make for me a holy place, which Chanti b'seichom, and my Malchus, my Shechina, will dwell within you. And it's written plural. He doesn't explain this here because this is a common, often brought explanation of this pasuk elsewhere. It says, make for me a holy temple, and my Shekhinah will dwell amongst you, but it doesn't say, or it doesn't say in it, excuse me, my Shekhinah will dwell within you, plural. It doesn't say within it, it says within you, plural, which means this itself, make for me a mikdash. You elicit your own malchus, your own, all of the things we said earlier about what malchus is, and Elul is the time when the king is available. Elicit that, right? And align yourself totally with holiness. And this is your holiness is your wholeness. WHOLE, your wholeness. The Eitzah Yitzhak is saying an advice. Now he's going to give it how to do this, because you're in the desert, right? It's not happening. So the advice for this is, the Torah says you lose a lost object. It gives a little piece of advice. Where do you go to look for it? And you say, well, where did you last have it? Look over there. So it says, es havaya. And in this case, it says, look over there for God. Es havaya, Elokecha, for God your God. Which means what? Pirish? And you can see it's written, Hashem saw, this would be at the time of creation of Adam, there was a light that went from one end of the world and one end of time to another, and it is called the Or Ein Sof. So Hashem looked at this light. He looked at this light, and saw its goodness. And one of the perushim, one of the explanations of our sages about it saw its goodness is a very interesting pirush. Kitev laganuz. What's good about it? It's good to be hidden. This light, it's shown beyond time and space. It's good to be hidden. That's what's good about it. Meaning what? Shebechinas or, this level of light, shehu bechinas ha'oras penimius rotzoni yisbarach, which is a revelation of God's innermost self. Yesh b'chol echad v'echad miyisrael is in each and every Jew, ela shehu bechinas hesed v'hala ma'oid, but it's deeply and very darkly concealed. B'tevo'oi, in his nature, it's sunk in our nature. It's embedded in our nature, but not revealed, like other mashalim that are given, like gold in earth, where it's there, but a lot has to be done to pare away the dirt in order to see it. So it's there. It's there, this ha'ora from the Ein Sof, this ha'ora, this ability to see beyond time, beyond place, is lodged in the soul of every Jew, particularly, and is there, but it's gnus. It was good to be covered over. Why it was good to be covered over is not saying. I'm not sure if he will, but that's another whole path to go down. But it was good. So this is our Koyach HaEnsof, the power of infinity that we have invested in us, is in a state of gullus. That's the desert. That's another way of characterizing the desert. And there's such a person that is in such a state of concealment that it's lost, totally lost contact with who I am, completely lost by that person. And we call that gullus. That is a definition of gullus, to be totally out of touch, and degrees of gullus, somewhat out of touch with who you really are and what you're really capable of and what Hashem has designed you for in the first place. And on this it says, go look for that which you've lost. Go and dig for it. And the only thing you're to dig for and really search for is something really valuable that you lost. So you're searching, if you're missing this, so we'd say, you don't say, I don't have it. And this change I'm about to say in language, I think, is very important. You don't say, I don't have it. You say, I lost it. And when you lost it, there can be big energy now to go find it. So who avoided etzle bechinas gullus? It's in a state of gullus. Shehu bechinas nitzutz elikus. And what's in a state of gullus? The spark of godliness, the spark of the Shekhinah, the divine presence, which is within us. With that, I'm skipping on this paper. I bracketed out this thing to see if we can finish it tonight, which I'd like to. Okay. Since I turned the page, let me take a little sip. And anybody have any comments or questions yet? Okay. Excuse me.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Go.
So when, at the beginning, in terms of the recap, and discussing the fact that there's Hashem in the field, leaving the field, in the palace, and then also that there's the field, there's the desert, and then there's the palace. Right. Are they parallel to each other? Are we?
What do you mean parallel to it? Oh, those three states of the king?
Mm-hmm. Are they parallel to the three?
I'm thinking out loud, and I did say not exactly. In the metaphor, the city is the place he's going to be crowned. So the crown is going to become visible, and that's definitely a city state. The Soda, but the problem is it's hard to, based on everything, what little I know in Hasidus, it's hard for me to equate the field state with a desert, because in the Hasidus that I've learned in every place I've seen it, the Soda is connected with the place where things thrive. It's the garden. There's an expression, Malka Soda Ovid. I think that's the right answer. It's a right order of words. The king works the field. And working the field is planting, is plowing and planting and harvesting, all the things that bring, and that's not a desert. So, in the city that he's going to, right, well, that's the city again. So we have the city, we don't have a desert. And so I don't know. It doesn't seem that there's, to me, that there's a parallel to desert in those three areas.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And this is what it means, go seek from there. This language, it says, go zehu bikashtem, seek it from there. There is a place, you don't know where it is, but there is a point, right, where you can find it, right? So it's a point you can point it with your finger, though you don't know where it is yet. But if you're going to go there, there's a point, right? Hashiyom love you say, ki who is that? As we say, ki zehu and ezehu. We think about Hashem. Who is this and who is he? But we have some awareness of what we're talking about. Of course, we don't know its wholeness, especially about God. But here we don't either know exactly where, but we know there's a place. He said, so the real Zeh, the one and only thing that you can say really is, because this thing has no predecessor being before it, is the language of the Rambam. He is the primordial that has no primordial before it. He's the true Zeh. So the Alter Rebbe says here, this word Zeh, is something you can point at with your finger. And what is that? The only thing you can say that about, which is primordially, meaning before forever, extant, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's one of the things that makes him HaKadosh, removed. Not living in the, responsible for the reality that we live in, but and at the same time much deeper than it. Deeper is not a good word even. Anyway, here's the only thing about which you can say truly Zeh. Zeke liv yanvehu. And when we left Mitzrayim, we were on our way out. We said, this is my God, and I will adore him, I think. Yeah. Because we saw when we left Egypt, there were a couple of times that we saw at Mount Sinai. This injected our souls with a vision, a deeply embedded vision. When a person has a vision, so he's a visionary, where did it come from? It came from somewhere. And we call it a visionary because it's so innovative, important, because it comes from something so deep. So we had vision. Mount Sinai, we had vision. We had Hashem taking us out of Egypt and Mitzrayim. Mokem Mishkan HaKlippas, but the source, the place that where the Klippas live, right? The things that cover over the revelation of God, Nikra Shom. It's called there. So we have here and there, or this and that. This being something that you can see clearly with your, and that or Shom over there being something in a place, but at a distant place. Klamer, Omek Ma'oid Ma'oid. So when we say that the place, where's the place where godliness, it's a place, but where godliness is turned inside out, so to speak, the Klippas cover it. That's called a place which is the Omek Ma'oid Lamata, the most deep, dark place down here below. Okay, that's there. To what extent any one of us is really, to that extent there, I have nothing to say about that. But there's here and there, and there's places in between. You're on the road to here or on the road to there. Okay, however, one who blemished, right? Now, this is someone who's done something that is forbidden in thought or speech. How much more so indeed. And this it says, go look for it over there. What is the over there? Examine your ways. Examine your deeds. Examine your speech. Examine your thought. These are your three garments. And what do they indicate? Ashalei toivim, those thoughts which are not good. And good, I mean, we've probably heard this from me before. Good is defined to mean that which is in accord with God's will. And not good is what's not accord with God's will. Okay, so examine about those deeds or thoughts and or speech which are not good. So he's giving us, remember, he's giving us a path in how to get back in touch with the Shekhinah within us, with the Malchus, with the King within us. Get back in touch, whether you call that the field or the city, but get out of the desert, right? And the start, he says, if getting in, first thinking about the you that you could be, and I don't mean just as the imaginary you, I mean the one that Hashem has imagined, made, imaged for you, that you. So think about that, and the distance between what that is and what it's designed to be, in your own ways, in your own, who you are. In this way, one's heart will become bitter within him. And I have to here, bring to bear the strong difference that the Alter Rebbe tells us in Tanya about bitterness and sadness. Because, and he says very clearly, too much concentration in what you're not could lead you into despair. But just the right dose of combination of bitterness, and he said bitterness and the possibility of what could be that would take you out of that bitterness. But bitterness being, he said, bitterness is just like a spice, is a bitter, or a drink, right? You add bitters to add spice, to add strength. So bitterness has power to it. It's its strength. Yismarme, to be bitter. I think probably everybody can relate to that. I'm not going to take it. I'm going to get up and do something. So through this, Yismarme liba, the heart becomes bitter within you. The Yoshev al Hashem, and that will motivate you to come back to Hashem, v'yirachamehu, and He will have mercy upon you. One thing that I didn't say, that He does say in this Maimer about Chodesh Elul, it's the month of the strong, strong revelations of the 13 attributes of mercy. And ani l'doidi v'doidi li, we have to arouse, I is us, we have to arouse that Hashem should have mercy upon us. That comes from feeling some distance and feeling some incapability, which can bring about reliance and nullification, meaning openness, to open ourselves to ask Hashem to help us, to help the world, etc., etc. This is a time which is wide open for those appeals. King is in the field, showing his smiling face to us. So we, Ani Ladoidi, we are to our beloved. We down here below are to him. That he should arouse great mercy on the spark of godliness which is within us in a state of galus. And on this it says about Yaakov Avinu. It says about he was the third of the Avos, and the third Midah between Chesed and Gevurah is Rachmanis or Tiferes. And it says about Yaakov, Asher Poda es Avraham, he redeemed Abraham. Why is that? Ki midas Yaakov hu midas Rachmanis. The Midah, the attribute of Yaakov, is the attribute of mercy, compassion. Shal yidei poida mehagalus, and in this way, it redeems from galus. So we're using these people as archetypes, right? Abraham, Avraham, and Yaakov. Archetype of compassion, Yaakov. Archetype of Chesed, Avraham. And when the Chesed, the kindness, the goodness of Hashem gets hidden, it can be brought out of its place through the expression of Rahmanis. And that's what he says, that Rahmanis, Yaakov, redeems from the exile the midas of Ava, the midah of love, which is midas shel Avraham, which is the midah of Avraham Avinu. So, okay, Nikra Avinu. That's why he's called our father. Okay, so this gets into why is he called our father? What's a father? So the Zohar says, what is a father? Elias bra kiro de'avuha. No, it's actually saying, what's a son? A child. A son is bra kiravo avuha. It says that the child is like the limb of the father. Now, of course, in a baby, it's even more so. It even affects halacha. To one point, a baby can be considered, and the language in the Nigla, the revealed part of Torah, is the baby at an early point can be considered like a limb of the mother, not yet something of independent or potentially independent human being. This is important in the halachas about abortion. But in any case, the child innately and its nature is, and its physiological connection to the father is that the child is like the limb of the father. And if so, just like a limb, your finger, let's say, is bottle nullified to your will, as soon as you want to move your finger, it moves. So the child, because his nature is to be part and parcel of the father, so the wandering prince or princess, wandering to what extent, whatever we are wandering, toward the desert, away from the city. So we have to remind ourselves that we have this inherent connection to the king, like a child, like a limb to a part of, like we're being a body, we're a body part of the king. So, but however, a person who does this and examines his deeds and doesn't arouse the attribute of Rahmanas, which he didn't say there's really two ways. There's Rahmanas, you have Rahmanas on yourself because this isn't the real you, the possible you. This isn't the possible you. And and that arouses God's mercy because his intention in creating you in the first place was that you should become the possible you. So, but what about a person who can't, arouse this Rahmanas? And his heart doesn't become bitter within him. Bitterness is motivational bitterness. And even though he deepens his thoughts, how is it that the spark of godliness that's within me is coming into Gullus, that spark which is in my soul? So if a person that doesn't work and he can't seem to arouse a sense of compassion and relationship of that kind with Hashem, so this is what he should put on his heart. And take upon himself the following mashal. It's the nature of, this is a powerful mashal. It's the nature of a person. When there's a pain in his body, I feel it's a purin ragla, even if it's a pain in his toenail. Because he stubbed his toe, literally. That also affects the way you feel. He uses the words your brain, and you become tsar. You're in a state of tsar, of psychological pain, not only the physical pain. It can, yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, when is this happen? This happens in this mashal. Stay with this mashal. When the toe is still connected to the body and to the nervous system. Before the toe is cut off. If the toe were, or it literally says, when the toe gets cut off, now we know that there's some reflective in people who have amputations. For a while, there is some reflective feeling, but it goes away. And this leg or toe is over here, and the body is over there. So if you cut that leg over here, the body won't feel it. That's, they said, to me, this is it's quite a mashal describing how a state of coldness, a state of disconnect, where it's so bad that you don't feel the disconnect at all anymore. That's how bad it is. Okay, because you don't margish as a koyeb, because the lemon is cut it off from you, and separated from its source. So kach anachnu, similarly, we, children of Israel, we are joined to him and cling to him. Therefore, we have to feel lahargish hakoyev, to feel the pain, the hapagam, and the blemish pogmu, that pogmenu, with which we are blemished and which we are causing that blemish, right? Because we're not doing what we're supposed to do or doing what we're not supposed to do. These things, as I said earlier, these 613 are our 613. This is who we are, right? So if the alignment isn't there and there's a blessing and there's no blessing, it should bother us that we don't feel the pain. If we were connected in any way, we would feel the pain. But we're huradnu begolus. We're down deep into the gullus. What is down deep in the gullus? The nitzutz elokut, the spark of God. Yafal pi shechot, and this is an expression from Chazal. Even though I've sinned, it doesn't bother me. And there's another expression, interesting enough to this, that since the power of shuva is Ein Sof, one can say, let me sin now, and I'll change that around with shuva. But both of them, either way, either your feeling goes connected, and you say, even though I'm a sinner, I am really still, and yes, it's true, you are still who you are, meaning designed, and you have all those 613. You are made in the image of God, even though I've sinned. And you have this spark of God. This is simple. Just put this on your head. It's never ever departed from you. It's just that in exile. And not only that, Hasar, you're still called a prince of light, because you're capable of being a prince. Everything is there. All the equipment is there. It's just some connections that you need to, I keep saying you, that one needs to make. So we remain in that state, but it's, however, been become a potential state versus an actual state. But knowing that it's that state and that we have the power to return to that state, again, it's not the way of the king to play with playthings. We are not playthings. We are created in his image for the purpose of making him present and actual in this world, and seeing the day when it should be. Any minute now, when all of this will be revealed, that the world needs and would get its rectification. But think of ourselves always as a sar. Sar is a prince. Even when the prince is in prison, he has a aura that's different from an ordinary person in prison. So our neshamas may be in prison, but they're a prince in prison. And we have the capability, we've inherited it from the king himself to bring our own geula. So you can still see it, that it may just be cracking a little bit, but we are a sar. And as a result of that, if I were able to really take that to its whole and say, look who I really am, he says, with one fell swoop, one movement, you can change yourself from one end to another. What's the right word? If you really made contact with the core of who you are, meaning the godly core, the nefesh elokis of who you really are, the spark of God within you, and transmute that from one end to the other, lagamri, completely. To return to your more primordial state. And one who doesn't feel being cut off, doesn't feel in state in galus, that's because, remember, a muscle of the foot separated from the rest of the leg, is because the blemish is kol kach, is so deep, that you're completely cut off. Now, you have to take this with a grain of salt. You can never be completely cut off, otherwise you're gone. Not only just dead, but you've fused back into the allness, right? But relatively speaking, I'm putting these words in, and other people may disagree, but you have to say, relatively speaking, you are very separate from your root. And from this, back to the point of this particular meditation, back from this realization of how far you are and the bitterness that comes from realizing how far you are, that will arouse you having compassion, tears, compassion on yourself. And that will mida keneged mida, measure for measure, arousal from below to above, particularly in Chodesh Elul, when the 13 attributes of mercy are more available than any single other month of the year. That will motivate, touch Hashem's 13 attributes of mercy to have mercy upon us and give us what we need to come back to our true selves. Yeah. Okay. With that, we're going to move over to complete this mimer. Okay, so from this level that we've been talking about, there's drawn into her, meaning into the soul, or haganus. Remember the light that was hidden, and it was good to hide it. Now, he's not going to go into that. This is a whole subject of a lot of Tanya, what the goodness. It's the power that comes from bitterness. The cliche way we hear it, light which comes from darkness, right? What do you mean light? Well, it's true, isn't it? That the sun comes after the end. Why is that? Because the darkness gives a push. The darkness isn't the state that the world wants to be in. And when it's in a state of darkness, the world has an instinct, if you could just get in touch with it, to say, get me out of here. I want out. This is not really me, right? And that power creates an emergence when it is revealed, this Geula state in a person or in the world is revealed, it brings about an intensity of light that was never, ever here before because it's driven from the bitterness. So b'china zu nimshach bo organu. So this bitterness brings out, has the capability at least to bring out the hidden light. The beginning avaru miseteris, the hidden love which is within us. Remember we said Rachmanis Yaakov redeems Abraham. When the chesed, when the love is in gullus, when the world is not seeing love, being togetherness and and inclusiveness and so whatever, all the words you want to say about oneness and love, Rachmanis, having pity, compassion on ourselves and our fellow human beings, is the way to bring it back. Yaakov redeems that gullus chesed, right? So this reveals the hidden light, which is the hidden love, and it brings it back the state of the light which was in Sheshes Shemei Bereshis, the light which is Tov, that light which was good to be hidden away comes and shines for those Sha'avar Navas Nashi Mikavar. And this is the idea. The person has a love for the soul from way back, from eternity. However, if gam imotza es ha'aveda he loy hiskayim boy or Hashem bilti kelim. Now, okay, another little twist here. Even though this love, imotza es ha'aveda, you found that the love, or you found what was lost, the lost object, right? That intimate, organic, better connection you have with God. That light, you should know, now that you found it, it's not going to last unless you build, reconstruct, firm up your vessels, your kalim, your vessels for the light. Because if not, the light, the insight, whatever you want to call it, the flash that you may have, of which we do, thank God, occasionally have flashes of the sense of godliness in the world, from whatever a leaf that falls through all the poets in the world and what they've expressed about the feeling of the life behind the life, and et cetera, et cetera. And you may have moments like that. But if you don't build kalim to hold it, they'll depart. Those lights will depart. But lochen, therefore, Eitzelatz is kelim l'or Hashem. Advice is, okay, build vessels for the light of Hashem. Now, what are the vessels for the light of Hashem? Heim oisius HaTorah. These are the letters of Torah, right? Remember, just explain this a little bit because it's very brief. When Hashem comes to create everything, he does it through speech, right? V'yedaber Hashem, v'yomer Hashem. It's all through speech. And speech is, I mean, I'm saying obvious things, but it has to do with this little metaphor, is what is speech? It's a modulation of wind, which comes from the chest. These are just as a mushal from Tanya and many other places. Speech is a modulation of wind in the 5 articulative powers of the mouth. These are the 5 gavoras, the way speech gets articulated into letters. And every letter is a pictogram of godly energy. And those letters are organized in a particular way in 2 major achievements, so to speak. One is the creation, God's major achievements, the creation and the Torah. And so, if you want to make, and the letters are, what are they? They are vessels for God's light. The letter Yud contains God's Chokmah. The letter He contains God's Bina. When you put them together, you get a name of God, a shorthand name of God, Yud Ke Vav Ke, right? Beis Beis is the word bias. It's the power to construct an edifice that somebody can live in, right? And each letter, and I'm just touching the skimming surface of the meaning of the letters. Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg has a thick book on the Aleph Beis, going way into it. But I hope, and you can ask me questions, of course, I hope you're getting the drift. So where are the kelim? The kelim is to occupy yourself in the letters of Torah, not in the way of, in this case, not just learning, let's say, the halacha for the sake of knowing what to do. I mean, that's totally, because the mitzvahs are God's will, and therefore, if you don't know what to do, you can't fulfill God's will. But here we're talking about oisius HaTorah, limud HaTorah, studying Torah of course, for its meaning, but also for the meaning the pshat. What's it mean al pi halacha? What's it mean in a quasi-philosophical way? But also the deeper levels, the remez, the drosh, remez, and sod levels of the letters. And they become kelim. Ki beis imi, it's a house of my mother. It says, I don't know where this is from. It says, bis imi, the house of my mother, zu Torah shebekasav. That's the written Torah. It's from Shir HaShirim. Yes. From Shir HaShirim. Remember this, it was roughly the pasuk. The king Solomon, the king is taking his bride into the inner chamber together. They're going into the Yichud room. And he says, bringing my bride into the house of my mother. Zu Torah. This is the Torah. The Torah is marrying the Torah. Bringing my mother. Yeah, this is the written Torah. V'cheder haroisi, and then there's another language in Shir HaShirim. Cheder haroisi, the inner room. Haroisi, where I could be weaned, or I'm not sure weaned or developed. Zu Torah Shebal Peh. This is the oral Torah. So we see in this metaphorical expression, I mean, we see that as a metaphor for the levels in the Torah, the written Torah and the oral Torah, the inner room and then the innermost chamber.
Which one is the mother?
Okay, the house of my mother is the written Torah. That's my mother. And the room of Hiroshi, I think, is where the birth takes place. But someone have to look at it. That's the oral Torah. So the mother is deeper, obviously, right? The mother first of all, develops and then holds totally internally. And that's the written Torah, because it's holding in its very compact letters everything that's ever going to come out of it, which is the entirety of Mishnah, Gemara, Kabbalah, etc. So that's the mother. Everything's still in the womb. That's Torah Shabbat. That's the Torah Shabbat. And then the room of Herosi, which I do believe is now more so now, I have to look it up, is where the birth takes place. And that certainly equates to Torah Shabbat Peh, where everything is expressed. Okay? Yes, I guess. And we'll finish with this little paragraph, the end, which is the end of the minor. And it's brought in the Zohar on the pasuk. The pasuk in Shir HaShirim goes on. Ani todoidi, I'm to my beloved. My beloved is with me. We shepherd, we pasture amongst the roses. Shoshanim, and this is going to also refer to Torah because Shoshana is the word Shoshona, which means to learn. Shoshana, rose, Shoshona with a vav. Well, they're both with a vav. You just pronounce it differently. Shoshanim is rose. Shoshona, it means halacha. You learn Torah. Belachin Kasiv, and that's why it's written metaphorically. So now this little piece in Shir HaShirim becomes a metaphor for the written Torah becoming the oral Torah. And you see it's written pasturing amongst the roses. So the Jewish people, Ki Yisrael, when we pasture amongst the roses, right? And when we pasture amongst the roses, we're in a garden. As we said, a garden gives fruit or a garden gives flowers, but a garden gives something off. I mean, something comes from the garden. And so what's coming from the garden is that we Jewish people who are tending this garden, we give parnasa, we give nourishment, we give pleasure, we give beauty to Hashem himself, to our Father in heaven. Because through being occupied in Torah, which is God's will, so through Torah, Ruach Asi Ruach, the Zohar says one breath or one spirit brings about another and draws down the other, which is back to our theme here in the month of Elul, the spirit that we arouse down here is easily touching and easily arousing the spirit up above. And that joins the two, our soul with the source of our soul. And that's something that happens in the month of Elul. It happens whenever someone learns Torah, depending on the depth of learning Torah. But this is a Eis Ratzon. This whole month is an Eis Ratzon, that if we turn our face to him, he will turn his face to us. And in turning his face to us, he blesses at the end that we should all enter Rosh HaShana with a year which is revealed chesed, revealed kindness, revealed peace. And that's our minor. Shana, your hand is up. I just noticed.
Well, I just put it up.
Oh, okay, good.
It's nice to be here. Nice to always have this class as like a landing place for all of us together. Consistency. Even if we don't have our faces on, there's something to it. Your face represents all of us. And I feel like, well, I actually wanted to say the thing from last week because we ended on Jonathan's birthday note instead of,
right.
And so remember you talked about how Chachma has inside of it, like the bina on the bottom, like you could cut it apart and there's pieces in it. So
right.
This week I learned about how each of the sfirot from Rav Yitzhak Ginsburg, and you spoke about him today with the letters, so I knew I had to say it, that each of the Nekudot matched one of the sfirot. And guess what? Malchus has none, it's the combination. So it contains all, like you cut it, not that it's nothing, it's that it's everything.
It's everything.
Yes. And so my B'chein from last week merging into this week, literally this week contains last week, that there's it's like, if let's say you have a Shva and a Kamatz, you know what I mean? They have them together. So
right.
You have both. And I see many times mostly the Shva or whatever. The B'chein from this week is that I remember learning also that, I don't know if Malchus, which is like the sovereignty, is the mouth, but also the feet. And I'm relating the feet now, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's like the idea that each one is the archetype you mentioned. And I remember learning that each one was a chariot for what you described. So like part of I just knocked into someone. You got it? Okay. Sorry, I physically in person just now knocked into someone by accident. So part of what was my sentence? Sorry.
we're talking about archetypes.
Oh, yeah. I like this idea that we always had Jewish archetypes, that they're not only the spheres, they're actually human beings, because we know you and how they contain all of it, not just one, but also that inside of each one, like I think Tiferet and Yesod show us the most that they're like a blend of two,
Well,
and in the middle.
they are both blends. They're all middle kavod. And so is Malchus. Malchus is the ultimate middle kavod. It takes everything together.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna. So if each one is a chariot, then on each one of, so like let's say we say Avram was mostly Chesed, or Yaakov, Tiferet, and whatever. But really from the Chesed side with Gevurah mixed in, which is Yitzhak, I feel like the B'chein for me this week, even though I'm saying my second one because I didn't get to last week, is this idea that the archetype itself has all of them in it. So I know that this is not such a, I'm going to say it like this, but I remember on my journey, someone bringing up tarot stuff. I'm not at all talking about, there's a siren. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Let me think for a
just
second.
Just say your B'chein. Just say your B'chein. Just say it
okay.
straight out.
So I feel like the thing that the person needs the most is the one that is going to emerge from the Malchus. Like, since we all have our Malchus, we don't have to be one or the other. It's like a chariot. So there's all the riders, the whole committee is there.
Sure.
So at the moment that one committee voice needs to speak up, it will. And like, for example, parenting without boundaries is not actually chesed. Like I was, I'm not a parent, but I was a child, and I'm around a lot of people who are parents. And so I just think this idea, like I see what happens to kids just as a bystander when they don't have boundaries and limits, and they have no idea who they are, and they're so confused. And it's
Shana,
really a tool.
I want to interrupt you because I so much want to hear your B'chein. You have it, but can you say it in a way? I just what is it? Therefore,
okay, so therefore, when it might feel like we're one person or we're another person, like we developed a person, remembering Malchus is all potential. So there are all the different committee voices in the carriage, in the chariot. And since each of us have that, for example, the example I gave was like if somebody is a parent and they think it's chesed, or even a boss, and wants to be so nice and Mr. and Mrs. Nice Guy, but then doesn't give boundaries, it's actually a type of cruelty because the other person doesn't know the limit. So
I hear you. I think in my own. I'm just translating it in my own words to make it my own B'chein. That we each have it all, right? From the Ein Sof, which has everything in it, and it's all down inside of us, our infinite Nefesh Elokis corresponding, and it contains it all. And this is brought out in many places that souls contain mixtures of right side, left side, of masculine, feminine, middle, and because it's there, we have. And one other thing I'll just add, I guess my B'chein is I don't have the same name you have. Meaning, I have, with all of this potential that we all have equally, there's something that's me that differentiates you, and that particular balance is what I'm trying to. The most me, my most godly me, is what we each of us are meant to be created for, and it's that mosaic that will be the geula, not a singular white light, but a mosaic of all the pieces shining in their individualistic, bright way. So my B'chein, hopefully this next week between now and then, I can improve my ability to do that, and all of us here can do the same.
Amen. But I feel like you didn't get what I was saying was that even if it's not yet, it's usable yet. Like if someone has all the alphabets, like we each have all the letters, right?
Use the tools you can grab, but they're all there, and it's
right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, let's say you haven't used, let's say, a letter. That letter could come up organically, naturally. If you tap into your intuition, you'll know you need more Aleph or more Zion or whatever it is. It's like, that's what I'm saying the Malchus is.
Okay.
The Malchus contains all of them, and it will emerge from that place, whatever is needed. So I feel like that's a nuanced part. I just wanted to reiterate that.
Okay, beautiful.
Iteration. Okay, thank you for listening to me.
No, beautiful. Okay. We'll see you next week. Next week we'll what's that?
I'm just saying thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Next week we'll move into Rosh HaShana. Yeah, next week Rosh HaShana. Start learning about Rosh HaShana.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.